Hello, and welcome to the Reykjavik Grapevines Tips and Tricks. I'm news editor Andie Sophia Fontaine.
I am culture editor and listings director Hannah Jane. You will notice that we are not in the office. We have moved to a work at home situation right now to follow all of the restrictions because of the COVID pandemic. So that's really exciting. We get to be back on Zoom.
Yeah, I know I'm happy to be here.
Oh, definitely. Do you want to? Okay, so for this tips and tricks, we're actually going to do how to find a place to live in Iceland. And we're going to tailor this to people that are moving to Iceland for the first time. Maybe you don't know many people. We're not really going to talk about buying a place. That maybe will be a different episode. We're going to focus on renting. We're going to focus on finding a room or finding an apartment. So just putting it out there. And we're going to focus on Reykjavik rather than the whole country. If that is, I hope that's helpful to everyone. Yes?
I would think so. A lot of these are also going to apply to people who are living outside of the capital area as well.
Absolutely.
So first item on the list is?
Yes. Oh, I'm supposed to say it. Wow.
Yeah,
it's so weird being over Zoom because I'm looking at a video of myself, which is super weird to talk to. Anyway, it's very strange. But okay, the first thing I wanted to say, and I know that maybe this doesn't seem like the most helpful advice, but for me and for most people I know, it is the best way to find housing. And that is just asking around. That is asking coworkers, friends, and just posting on any social media. I've always found my best housing through just putting out that I needed a place, a friend of a friend contacted me, et cetera, et cetera. Now, I know that if you're moving here, you may not really know anyone, but you have a job and you have coworkers. I would ask them and maybe get them to post. I just feel like the best housing situations usually come via people or friends of friends. And then you also have, that it's more legit, that you're not going to be living with someone who maybe has, I don't know, is not weird, but it might be a bad situation. Do you want to add anything?
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true. Like making it in Iceland is pretty much all about networking. It's who you know.
Yes.
And word travels very fast because pretty much the entire country's on Facebook. So that is absolutely top-notch advice.
Oh yeah, and I think that is truly the best way. Also, but many people who have a vacancy in their apartment, a free room, or are renting out an apartment, they're just going to post on their own personal social media and just wait until someone contacts them. That's very much extremely common here. So that would be my first advice for anyone that's moving here. Even if you don't know very many people, ask your coworkers, ask maybe like the few contacts you have, ask people you're in school with. If you're in school, that would be number one. Now, we talked about Facebook, posting on Facebook, and that leads us to our second option for finding housing. Do you want to take this?
Sure. There's a number of rental Facebook groups, and they are numerous. They are legion.
Yes.
This includes
so many.
To search for them, it's important to know the Icelandic word for rent, which is leia, Leija, or leiu,
G.
Leigu. And you search
Leiga. Yes.
Leiga or Leigu.
Yes.
As in to leiu or for rent. Punch either of those words into your Facebook search bar and you'll see numerous groups that pop up. But in these groups, it's important to know what to look for and what to avoid.
Yes. So the first thing that I would avoid, obviously a lot of these groups kind of have weird bot situations. So if you post a something like, you know, I'm looking for a room for 3 months, looking for a room in Kópavogur or Hafnarfjörður or whatever you want, you might get like weird comments that are like, you should look at rent in Reykjavik for your room, and they'll lead you to a website with like some sort of weird prices. Avoid that. They're not real websites. There's some, I mean, even if they are, it's a very, I think it's a sketchy way to find a place. So like be aware of that first off. Is
Absolutely.
that good advice? Yes.
But even if you don't post directly in these groups, if you're looking at the different listings,
Oh, absolutely.
there's things that I would maybe view with caution, such as landlords that are
Absolutely.
posting properties without mentioning how much the rent is.
That is super important,
Yes, a lot of Facebook groups do
especially
this.
as a foreigner.
Mm-hmm. Especially as a foreigner, because you might not know what the going rates are. And so a lot of them will just try to pick and choose and see who's willing to pay the maximum amount of rent. But of course, a lot of these Facebook groups have this set up because, you know, somebody posts like a 20 square meter converted garage with no bathroom or shower that you have to use the main house for 250,000 kroner, and the comments will fill up with people laughing at them. These groups cater mostly to landlords, not renters.
Yes.
Just the unfortunate fact of things. I would also be wary.
And then you know.
Yeah, then you know right off the bat, like what their asking price is. There's no mystery. I would also, now, there are security deposits. It's usually called insurance here. I really would not go higher than 1 month insurance deposit.
Yeah.
Some will ask for 2. Some will even outrageously enough ask for 3. And I really don't know.
That's totally insane.
If that's even legal. Do you know, Hannah?
I mean, I think the thing about it, security deposits are if you're subletting a room, like if you're just renting a room from someone in an apartment, I think 2 months security deposit is ridiculous. You should be paying 1 month, because you're just renting a room from someone. You're probably not doing any sort of like legal agreement of, you know, like you're going to pay for damages or whatever. Now, if you're renting an apartment through like I don't know the right word actually, like through not like an agency, but like you're going through the building or whatever, you're renting, then maybe 2 months might seem less absurd because of, you know, like security, like if you damage something or whatever. That I think 2 months is still absurd, but that's the only situation I would ever say paying 2 months is okay. Otherwise, 1 month, that should be enough. Anyone who asks for more, it seems very sketchy. The other thing I would say is very sketchy is that Iceland has had a very big shortage of housing for the past, let's say, 5 or plus years. So there's been a lot of opening of what I would call incredibly sketchy housing that exists to take advantage of foreigners. So if you see a room that, and they say things like no bathroom, but it's near a swimming pool, they're saying that that's a room which does not have a bathroom, it does not have a shower, but there might be a swimming pool a few, like, you know, a 10-minute walk away that you can go there to shower. Like, and they have it at a ridiculous amount of money. Like, those exist to take advantage of foreigners. Be very wary of that. If anything feels weird or just know that there was a big housing crisis here where people could not find housing, and a lot of very sketchy situations sprung up. And those are still around. So be careful about that. But I'm sure that's true in any place. Maybe.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
And I think this is less of a problem now that tourism is pretty much cratered.
Yeah.
But you will see a lot of listings that are like available until May or available until June. Like that the actual lease is not for 12 months. It's only until the tourist season begins, until summer begins, because then they can start renting out the property on Airbnb, and you'll have to go through the whole rigmarole of moving out and looking for a new place all over again.
Endlessly. Um, Another thing about renting here, which is very much unlike other places, is that a lot of the time your rent might be tied to inflation, if that makes sense, which sounds really weird, but that will be in your written contract, which we'll talk about later. But
Mm.
that means that like you might have agreed to pay 70,000 a month for your room. Um, but because your rent is like, I guess they call it indexed or non-indexed, I don't remember which one actually, but it means it's tied to inflation. So you might get a call from your landlord or whoever and says, oh, this month you're paying 73,000. And that's why. That's sort of just a weird thing here that you kind of accept. But yeah, just know that that's a thing here. You are not being taken advantage of if that happens. It is a weird situation, and I don't really agree with it, but that's just the reality, and that will be in your written contract.
Yes,
I think, yeah. And
that is
and
an
on
excellent
that
point.
note, yeah, that is super weird, right? Right? It's like
It
every
is.
month you're like, I agreed to pay this and I'm paying more. What?
Yeah, the entire subject of
Craziness.
indexed loans is actually very controversial. It's something that's come up repeatedly in Iceland as something that they want to end. That you shouldn't have
They
to,
should.
if you take out a loan for 1 million, right, and you have a payment plan of, say, I don't know, 36 months, that with a tiny, tiny currency like the Icelandic krona, the slightest
Yeah.
ripple in the world currency market can be a huge wave here. So you'll end up having to account for like fluctuations in the currency market that aren't your
Yeah.
fault. You know, 18, like 1 million krona should be 1 million krona. That's what you pay. That's what you borrowed. That's what you should pay back with interest, which is unfortunately a part of our life and pretty much the entire planet, with a few notable exceptions. But
Yeah.
indexing is, as Hannah said, like it's a part of daily life in Iceland. And so if you see that, like you're not getting ripped off, it just means that you're paying your landlord's loans.
Absolutely. A great part of capitalism. Um, so I think next, there's a lot of, okay, along with these Facebook groups, there are other websites that you can find subletted rooms on or like apartments or whatever. The first one I'd recommend is bland.is, bland, sorry, bland.is.
Mm.
That's the website. Now that's like a general website where you can buy and sell. Like I've sold old phones on there and old computers, but they also have a section for rooms and usually like small apartments. I have never actually gotten a room off there, but I did look at some rooms. Like I went to go see some studios that were on there. I never ended up renting one, but they were like very legitimate. You're talking directly to um, the person who's renting it out. I know people who've gotten rooms off there. I would recommend that as like a more legitimate uh, website in the slew of Icelandic rental websites. Would you agree or no?
Yeah, it's definitely one of the better ones. Yeah, it's like a
Yeah,
Craigslist Iceland or something in a lot of
totally.
ways.
Yeah,
Buy and sell everything. Um,
yeah.
and
Of
there's
course,
also
you'll see things on there that are not real, but
Mhm.
or like maybe seem kind of sketch. But I think that that is one of the more legitimate ones. I know you had another one that you liked.
Yeah, well, it's a pretty good service.
Yeah,
It's called Leigulistinn.is, and all the links that we're going to mention here are going to be in the
yeah.
description. And as always, if you have suggestions for other tips and tricks with regards to finding a place to live in Iceland, do leave them in the comments.
Please tell us.
Please tell us because we don't know everything, believe it or not. Leigulistinn is a paid service, which is
Okay.
unlike Blonde. I think is Blonde free?
It's free.
Yeah, so it's a paid service. But bear in mind that like a lot of the rental Facebook groups, Leigulistinn also um, defers to landlords. So let's say you move out of a place and you had a big fight with your landlord because they're trying to hit you up for damages that you didn't do. and you have photographs to prove it or whatever, for whatever reason you moved out and you had a dispute with your landlord, if that landlord contacts Leigulistinn and says, I had a bad experience with this tenant, you're blacklisted from Leigulistinn pretty much forever.
Oh, damn.
That's an unfortunate side effect. So that's one to use with caution, I would say. If the Facebook groups don't work out, if blonde.as doesn't work out, then maybe turn to Leigulistinn. It's got a good search
But because
capacity.
it's paid, yeah, is because it's paid, does that mean that like perhaps there's like higher quality listings there? Like if you're trying to find more bedrooms, you have a family or something. Is that true? I don't know. I've never used it.
It's really well organized, and you can narrow down your search to very specific things in terms of what neighborhood you want to live in, how many bedrooms you're looking for, what type of apartments. Like if you're okay with living in a studio or, God forbid, a basement apartment, then you can include all that in your search parameters.
Yeah. I think that the other thing I would not necessarily recommend, but it is an option if you're only going to be here for like a month or 2 months, particularly now because the prices are way down, but you can look at Airbnb for rooms. The price will be higher than you would pay if you found something on a Facebook group or whatever, but there is sort of like more insurance for the customer. Like their Airbnb is pretty like serious about that. Like if there's like if someone claims that you damaged something, you know, you're Airbnb is more likely to like side with the customer, if that makes sense. I know that like this is a whole controversial thing, but if you're only going to be here for a month or 2 months and you really don't want to go through the hassle, Airbnb is a solid option to find a room or an apartment. Know that you will be paying more than market price, but along with that comes the fact that you're renting with like a corporation that is pretty serious with rules and stuff. So that's like another option. Yeah. But I would not recommend, like I have problems with Airbnb in general. So like, you know, and its effect on the housing market. But if you're there for 1 month or 2 months, that's sort of what it's for, right?
I would say so.
Yeah, I'd recommend it.
Very short term. If you're in a bind,
very short term,
and you got nowhere else to turn to, then yes.
Yes, and there's a ton of them in Reykjavik, and they're all quite nice. Other than that, now, if you go on websites like Visir.is, like most of the news websites have their own real estate sections. Those lean toward, we're going to link a few in the description, and they'll show up on screen here, I think, when we do our little screenshots that show up, right? I hope we do that for this. But there's a few of them, and those lean towards buying. That's sort of where you would look if you wanted to buy a place. They do have renting, like you can choose to like looking at rentals rather than houses that are for sale. That's another option. I think that again, those will lean towards people renting out whole apartments. If you're a family and you need a, 3-bedroom apartment or something, like that might be a better option than just posting on Facebook groups. That's just another place you can look. But again, that's probably going to lean towards whole apartments, might be more pricey, I guess.
Yes.
It would be a bit I don't know. I've never,
But on that subject, Hannah, what do you think of like renting rooms versus renting apartments?
I have only ever rented rooms here. So I kind of lean towards renting rooms. I don't have any children and I'm not married, or like I don't live with a partner. So it's just like, so renting rooms works for me more because then it's cheaper. It's probably easier to find everything. I think it's probably very different for you because you have a child and a partner.
Yes.
So like you would be looking for apartments probably, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But there is one other downside to renting a room versus renting
Yes.
an apartment, which is rent assistance. You can apply for
Oh
rent
yeah, we
assistance
should.
online, and we'll include that link in the description as well. But only if you're renting an apartment. Rent assistance is not
Yes.
available for people renting rooms. So if you're
Yes,
renting a
that's a really important thing.
yeah, but there's a way. Like if you're renting in a room, for example, like with some friends, whoever's name
Yeah.
is on the lease, if they're renting the apartment themselves, have them
Yeah.
apply for rent insurance if they have not already, and it brings everyone's rent down a bit if they're a
Yes.
good person.
There's a lot of yeah, and like why wouldn't you do that? There's very rent assistance here is very helpful. I think
Mm.
everyone should apply for it. Also, you can apply for it if you're a student at the university. Oh yeah, if you're a student at the university has their own housing site that you can look at. They used to, at least. I don't know if they still do, but they also offer dorms. I know the dorms are very competitive, but they do offer that, and you can get rent assistance for dorms.
The dorms are
Fun
competitive.
fact, I think. No, I mean like competitive to get into.
That's that's mind blowing to me.
I
Like
know,
it's
right? It's so crazy. Like, yeah. It's so crazy. Like, I have friends who've been on the waiting list for 2 years, or were on the waiting list for 2 years. Like, it's very competitive to get dorms. There aren't that many. Maybe it's changed nowadays. This is like 2 years ago I'm talking about.
I mean, I believe you. It's surprising because
Crazy.
it's like the opposite of what we're probably used to in the United States. Where
Oh,
you
yeah. And in my university,
right.
you're guaranteed housing.
Mhm.
Another thing, so to get into some tips, we already talked about some of the stuff you should not do, like stuff like 2 month security deposit seems a little bit excessive. We talked about what are clearly like flats that are totally ridiculous that have no bathrooms. There's been flats that have been posted over the past few months that have like bathrooms next, like a toilet next to your bed. That's disgusting. Don't do that. It's unsanitary. Um, I have a friend I have a friend who we just send each other horrible housing listings. But one thing you should do is get a written contract.
Mhm.
Always.
Absolutely.
Always.
In every single case, get a
Yeah.
written contract and be sure that the property is what they call Leigulistinn, which is registered with the district commissioner. That means it's a legal
Yes.
property, and you will have recourse if you need to take up some kind of action with your landlord, which hopefully
How
won't.
does one check that?
You can call the national commissioner. I'll we'll include the link to that as well, and
Yes.
just tell them where you're living, and they'll tell you whether or not the property is registered with them, which is super helpful.
It's crazy to think that people can rent out non-registered properties, but they can. They can even sell them.
For rent assistance,
But
you'll also need to
yeah.
get your lease thing list, and so yeah, that needs to happen if you want to get any kind of rental assistance for your apartment in the first place. That's one of the preconditions.
And where I wonder, do you want to share how you found the place that you're living right now and maybe some of your past apartments?
Yeah, I found this place on Facebook, and
Oh, cool.
yeah, I don't remember which one exactly. I think it was one for capital area rentals, and um, it was really this is very Icelandic as well. I went and visited the poster's profile, the landlord in question, and our mutual friend was my boss, our editor in chief. And so I knew that if this guy screwed me over, that I would have,
Yeah,
and he's a fantastic
that's
guy.
so good.
He's he's a really good landlord, and we got a good place this way. But in the past, yeah, I had settled for rooms with a verbal agreement. Um, I've repeatedly made this mistake as well of moving into a place and not immediately taking photos of everything. like the light fixtures.
Oh yeah.
I'm forever forgetting to
to.
do that, but please do that, because getting your deposit back when you leave can be like pulling teeth sometimes. And if they'll might say, oh, this was damaged, that was damaged, and what have you. And if you don't have photographic proof to
Oh
back you
yeah.
up, then you're kind of out on a limb and you've just flushed a lot of money down the drain.
So that's so important is to get. I mean, right now I currently live in Garðabær, and I live in an apartment with a friend of mine who I've known for a while and moved in with. So I think it's interesting when you move in with like a close friend, because you have an agreement, but like also, you know, if they turn out to be like a real shit roommate or a really bad landlord or something, you're also destroying a friendship as well. So that's an exciting like risk. It's an adrenaline rush. But in the past, I'm like giving advice on getting written contracts, but for the past few places I've lived have been verbal agreements with friends. I've only ever lived with people I knew that were friends of mine. So do what I say, not as I do. And I think in Iceland, like the goal is that in Iceland, like it is, I guess, more of a, I don't really know if I'm just saying crap right now, but I was going to say it is like a more financially beneficial position to eventually buy a place than it is to rent long term here, because your mortgage is significantly less per month than renting. So that is sort of like the advantageous position. Obviously, that's incredibly difficult you know, to buy, but I think more so than other places I've lived, people here seem more focused on buying apartments rather than renting long term, if that makes sense. Yeah. And do you have any other tips?
You know, apart from the stuff that would apply internationally, like try not to live in a basement apartment.
No.
I know we already brought that up,
Bugs.
but it's so depressing to live in a basement apartment. If you don't have a car, be sure that it's near a bus line.
Oh, totally.
Yeah, because that can be super inconvenient if you end up. And if like you don't have enough for an apartment on your own, but you do have friends who might be looking for a place, consider like all of you pooling your resources to look for a place together.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's a much better situation than moving in with rent. I mean, also in general, like I know that these are just tips for life, but like don't rent a place blindly. Like don't just agree that you're going to move in somewhere and not see it. Like make sure you go there and meet it. I'm just saying this because I've like always done this. Like I just agree I'll move in and I never see it, and then I just show up and hope for the best.
It's very brave.
Totally. Yeah. Also, there are some situations in Reykjavik that have the like work. We've talked about this in our past tips and tricks, but I do know people who've done the sort of situations where you're working for accommodation. Obviously, if you're in a pinch and you desperately need some place to live, like that could be an option as a short-term thing. But again, I really dissuade anyone from doing that kind of for entering that type of situation. Yeah, I just wanted to say that. Otherwise, there's camping grounds. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah. So thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this podcast and you learned some crazy cool information, consider joining our High Five Club, which is our subscription service to help the Grapevine keep on doing what it's doing. If you are interested in joining our High Five Home Club as well, that offers like home delivery. That's our like physical subscription service to the paper. And we also have a really crazy cool shop, which with like new products added almost daily, just like so much stuff, and like very, very well curated, I would say.
As always.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.